Um, we now turn to our final speaker of the day.
The hero.
He has heroically waited all of this time to speak. We're thrilled to have Vladimir Mitev, who is a Bulgarian, who is, I guess, strongly vested not just in Romania, but in Bulgarian-Romanian relations. And he is the founder of a very well-known blog called Bridge of Friendship, Bulgarian-Romanian blog. He is also an expert on Persian culture and history, and has another blog which unites Bulgarian, Romanian and Persian elements. He is a correspondent for Radio Romania, for Bulgaria, and an editor at the Romanian section of Radio Bulgaria. Vladimir, I think, has a unique kind of sensibility about what cross-regional cooperation looks like and might look like, because he lives in the city of Ruse, the Danubian city of Ruse, which is closer, I guess, in some ways to Bucharest than it is to many Bulgarian cities. So welcome, Vladimir. And the topic of Vladimir's talk today is practice-oriented activity on Bulgaria and Romania, geopolitical and regional issues. So thanks very much, Vladimir.
I also thank for the invitation. And I need to say that I like very much this idea which was coming from the organizers to speak about practice-oriented view. Because indeed, maybe as a final presentation, it makes sense to be less expert-like a presentation and maybe more related to experience. And experience usually takes place when you're without armor. I can say that for a long time in my efforts to travel in Romania or to do something, I have had this feeling, and now I even have it in Bulgaria. So really it's, I like very much the title of Alan Silito's autobiography. If you know, it's Life Without Armor. So I think this idea of going without armor could be useful in our region if one is resilient enough. Maybe I'll explain later what do I mean. There is the other part of my presentation, or the title of my speech is about geopolitical and regional ambitions or relations of the two countries. I need also to start with the introduction here, because many experts which I have discussed with over the years have the opinion that both countries are not agenda takers, agenda setters as they say, they are agenda takers. Some even argue there is no such thing as foreign policy of these countries.
Thank God your message is left.
Yes, I was thinking of saying that, yes. The thing is that apparently foreign policy is going, and it's a foreign policy which is related to the EU. And we are now in a situation in which both the foreign minister of Bulgaria and that of Romania have strong ties to the European institutions, which immediately could mean transfers in the fact that when the EU renews its push for enlargement in Western Balkans and the three EU-inclined countries of Eastern Partnership, that means that Bulgaria and Romania will play a role. And now what is this role? Which I have been doing some interviews over the last time, trying to hear something more concrete. I have had, for example, somebody knowledgeable in Western Balkans told me that maybe Bulgaria and Romania could be important in keeping Serbia away from Russia and China, as it was also discussed by other speakers. An opinion I got from Bulgaria was that Bulgaria even now plays some important role in trying to overcome these contradictions or conflicts which constantly appear in the Western Balkans. But to be honest, most of the answers I get, I interpret them more as just being of support, which translates into not creating obstacles. And now this is the thing which I guess everyone who is dealing with the region is aware of. You also spoke about the fact that some parts of Bulgarian societies have this issue with Macedonian ideology, if I may say. This is how it's framed in Bulgaria. And they see it as anti-Bulgarian, but it's part of the society. And also in the case of Romania, even recently there was this open demonstration of denial of Kosovo state by Romanian sovereignists at a football match. So that is just once again what I say as some kind of a context for what I'll be speaking now, because this politics in our countries, just like in other European countries, seems to be recently more clearly divided between the technocratic and the sovereignist tendency. And in the case of Bulgaria, I think it's very obvious. We have a government which is having foreign policy closely tied to the European Commission. We see that in a number of decisions, including regarding Ukraine. Suddenly, Bulgaria turns out to be more pro-Ukrainian than Poland, if I may simplify, of course, because Bulgaria voluntarily lifted its ban on Ukrainian agricultural imports, while in other countries of the region chose even to keep this ban continuously. And Bulgaria also provides arms to Ukraine in some recent decisions, while if I understood, Poland, for example, chose not to provide new arms. That's my information. So that is one line of Bulgarian politics. The other is the sovereignist tendency, which has different players or different people who try to appeal to it. Usually the president, Rumen Radev, is quoted as being of that tendency. There are also some smaller parties which try to appeal to it. And in the case of Romania, there is also something similar, not exactly the same, but of course, Romania has these allies who are strongly aligned to Euro-Atlantic institutions, but now we also, everyone I meet in Bucharest when I go, discusses about how the 2024 elections would bring greater presence in politics of sovereignist tendency. Last time when I read or discussed, it was about 25+% of Romanian voters. In Romania, the sovereignist tendency as a whole, not one party, but this is what I got as information. Maybe my Romanian speakers could correct me if I'm wrong about that. Now
in Bulgaria, it's a little bit less.
It's less. Yes, because usually our revival party is represented as such type of party, while other parties are still ambiguous, more ambiguous on that. Yes.
In all kinds of ways.
Yes. I just marked that sovereignists in Bulgaria right now, at least from my point of view, are more busy with rejecting any attempt for reform which comes from the government. So any attempt to do policy that maybe changes some vested interests is resisted by the sovereignist tendency, and there is always some kind of negotiation, some protest, then negotiations, then some amelioration of what the governmental policy is. And also usually they are against the pro-European view in Bulgaria on the North Macedonian future. And in the case of Romania, the sovereignist tendency is kind of anti-Ukrainian and anti-Maia Sandu in the Republic of Moldova. In fact, as far as I know, once again I can ask my Romanian colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong, but this Our Party, which is the most representative of the sovereignist tendency, it also has some members from the Republic of Moldova who have become citizens of Romania, and in fact they're competing on Moldovan grounds with Maya Sandu. I said once again, everything I say until now is some kind of a context, because I'm trying gradually to reach the issue of change, and which is related to, in my view, to having ambitions in foreign policy. And I think that I have to start with what I'm maybe most familiar with, the Bulgarian-Romanian relations. We have known that these countries belong to the same integrationist circles in the West, NATO, European Union, maybe others. But in spite of that, my feeling is that there is traditional reluctance for their both population and allies to interact with one another, in spite of all the tourist travelings. And there are of course positive things, but somehow there is a feeling that change happens slowly in these relations, change for good, meaning dynamization of these relations. We have a trade turnover of around 8 billion euro between the two countries, which is significant. But most of this trade is being done by foreign corporations who have presence in the two countries, and they either trade with one another or trade with their partners in the other country. The real dimension of Bulgarian-Romanian trade, if we look at it through Bulgarian capital, Romanian capital firms which are owned by citizens or entities of the two countries, much smaller. That is one example that foreign force sources of dynamism are greater in the interaction between Bulgaria and Romania than local. Another example could be seen in the fact that in March 2023, the two presidents of the country signed a declaration for strategic partnership, which was a good sign, of course. However, this declaration is not followed so far by actions which are framed in its under its aegis. And some people I discuss with in Romania or Bulgaria have the opinion that our foreign partners have requested that from our leaders, and it's being done, but at the lower level, let's say level of administration or bureaucracy, or medium level of leaders, people who really do the things, it's not assumed as a policy. And I believe here comes some kind of proposal or solution. I even argue about it in a study which I did for the Bulgarian Diplomatic Institute and will be presented soon publicly. There is a need for a people dimension of these relations. I even try to call it populism, Bulgarian-Romanian populism, which I know sounds terrible, especially among expert circles, but sometimes provocation is necessary. I mean, there is need for, let's say, more common people, not these people who are diplomats, politicians, not these people who are placed in some hierarchies and stick too tightly to national interests. There is need for such common people to act. And I believe that the action of such people could bring depth to the relations, could increase their potential. And I think this is lacking because when you don't know well your neighbor, there is feeling of distrust. You're too careful with him, or maybe some shocks appear, something unexpected happens, or some abuse happens. And this is why I try to promote or encourage engagement on people's level. And I think the change will come from there more rather than from allies. I believe allies are generally too much sticking to rules, procedures, and maybe in the case of Bulgaria, procedures are sometimes or often too strict. And also there is this obsession I believe in periphery of the EU with some strict interpretation of national interests. I can give example. For example, the last time Bulgaria and Romania agreed on their Danube border was in 1908. And the agreement was that every 10 years they would meet and renew the border or renegotiate the border, because you know that as a result of the Danube activity, islands appear or disappear or go to another place, and the border has to be renewed every 10 years. But after 1908, there was never agreement. They were coming to meeting, they were discussing, and in fact, agreement means often having some kind of compromise, letting the other take something, losing something. And when the rationale of allies is too much obsessed with kind of, I don't know, hegemony or not losing, not having compromise, agreement is not reached. So that is some examples such as this one make me put my faith more in common people who maybe are not so much invested in notions or in concepts, but they have greater versatility, I believe. That's something I'm suggesting, and I will be trying now to expand. We were speaking about Bulgaria and Romania, but you understand that our big issue is Western Balkans. And even though I have not had great experience with Western Balkans, I can imagine Balkans from their European dimension, Bulgaria and Romania. And usually in the Balkans, when you first meet with somebody in unmediated context, which means that there is no authority which somehow negotiates the relations or guarantees for them, too often there is abuse at the first meeting. This is the Balkans, of course. And usually you have to, that is even kind of a pre-step to forming a friendship. You have to pass the abuse, and if you are not too angry or, I don't know, disappointed, maybe some real relations start after that. I know it's a little bit funny, but it's also, I think, very real, and everybody who has dealt with Balkans, I believe, has had such experiences. Why does this idea of human agency or human relations in our region matter? Because I think that the classical EU-centric approach has limits, and maybe EU decision makers are aware of that. We see, for example, there is such a criticism that EU corporations appear where there are resources and they take over the resources. That's good. You have investments, but the problem is that investments, either in resources or in new production, they go often to places where there is capital, where big cities, for example, especially the second type of investment. And as a result of that, a super concentration of capital and money and people happens in these big cities, which are very few in Bulgaria. Large parts of Bulgaria, for example, get unpopulated. Villages are dying.
Cities are doing really well. Sofia and Bucharest.
Sofia is doing really well, but other cities, even to the extent of 1,000 people, I think many cities in northern Bulgaria are in decay. So that's why in the study which I refer to, I advanced this idea of relations with the neighbor, because I believe it can generate some sense of living and some dynamism in northern Bulgaria. It's as far as I remember, from the last census 2011 to the 2021 census, many cities lost 20% of populations, many areas, counties. This is a problem which Bulgarian decision makers are not quite discussing or offering solutions. That southern Bulgaria is well developed, and many of the European investment, including in new railroads, go to southern Bulgaria, and in northern Bulgaria it somehow remains undeveloped. It remains the way it is, to die out of itself.
May I just ask you, one of the things that's kind of curious to me is that there hasn't been enough cross-border cooperation on infrastructure development. Are there still only maybe 3 bridges across the Danube, or 4?
2, in fact.
2. So Vidin
and Russia.
Yeah. And the governments haven't been able to work together to do joint projects that might help create economic development along the Danube?
Yes, I'm not here. I'm not sure I have the exact answer about that because Bulgarians have the feeling that Romanians are delaying the things, and Romanians claim that Bulgarians are delaying the things. Um, um, Sometimes in some interviews I have had officials claim that on political level there is agreement, but experts need to agree too, and the agreements of experts takes a lot of time. So a lot of things are announced. For example, last year in the summer there had to be opened ferry boat between Ruse and Giurgiu, and it's still even now not opened. And the same thing with the new bridge at Ruse Giurgiu. It was discussed that the agreement for it will be signed in the last autumn, and now 1 year later it's not signed. Only there was an announcement that some feasibility studies are going on. So I don't know what is the reason for that, but I tend to think that as far as I know from a communication with state allies in Bulgaria or maybe even Romania, maybe there is also a little bit of psychology in that distrust, a lack of ability to communicate correctly. Maybe maybe I'm not seeing it rightly, but I'm aware of a strongly national-centric approach in some allies, and I guess that creates tension when you meet with the other. And maybe I can return now to my standard speech that there must be certain one of the problems when many people would say that we can have Balkan Federation, there have been such fantasies, and many people say on table, for example, in the inn, we are all Balkans, we like Balkan music, we like Balkan drinks, etc. But in my view, a problem of these relations, including Bulgaria, Romania, or others, is that many people go into them with certain baggage. And I mean like accumulation of certain power over over being. People get easily frustrated or imagine some fantasies that the other is very bad, thinks badly, suspicious, etc. So I try to, I think if such human relations are to be built and such dynamism is to be searched on human level, there must be certain process of unlearning. Maybe people who deal with social sciences are aware with this term. I think a German is promoting this term of unlearning. There must be some unlearning of what we have learned wrongly in our transition times, so that new efforts and new lessons and new experience can be integrated. This inability to have normal dialogue between people in group, in my view, is not only plaguing relations in the region, but also it leads to polarization, which we observe now in a number of countries in the region, from Poland to Bulgaria. It is people seem to be unable to lead dialogue with one another. They enter in dialogue with their baggage, so they kind of know in advance that the other is wrong or evil, and the discussion too often affirms that notion. Some insults or blame games happen. I think both in relations in our countries and in relations in the region, we have this challenge of somehow making finding a way to think or talk in a way that doesn't encourage polarization. And I think media are to play some role in that. I'm slowly moving to my point. I know it takes time, but I think that the problem in what we have in polarization too often is some kind of choosing side is not always the best solution in when we are in polarization. And from my point of view, it's more interesting to somehow be on the sidelines, and if possible to somehow transform the conflict or the contradiction or to be able to somehow upgrade it to a greater level of complexity. I know that it sounds too abstract, but I have the feeling in every country in Europe there is this division in some way between technocrats and sovereignists. But you see that some countries are in the core of the European Union and other countries are even outside the European Union. And sometimes I just dream, can't we just switch off the contradiction for some time? Because I think that these conflicts, this polarization keeps us at the same level. We grow in peace, we don't grow in war. And I just want us somehow to switch off for some time, grow, do the experience which integrates us or leads us to the European Union rules and standards. And then if we wish, if somebody so much wants to have contradiction, let's switch on the contradiction, but already in a different context. I think cross-border media could be maybe playing some role in such kind of redefinition of the contradictions which you have, or looking them from outside. Because cross-border media are somehow by definition with one leg outside of what is there in the so much plaguing the national elites. And cross-border media are also able, if they are done well, to bridge the experience of one country with the experience of another country. And I thank you for introducing my media activities. Indeed, I started my Bulgarian blog, The Bridge of Friendship, in 2015. And you can imagine, of course, then I was younger than now, and it took some overcoming of suspicions, distrust, challenges. From my point of view, I was moving in uncharted waters. But as I was affirming, various people in the two countries and beyond them started seeing sense in the messages of a media which appears to be overcoming the national-centric approach to bilateral and regional relations. And this led to to the establishment of, in its author, which is me, what I refer to as dynamic identity. That is an identity which doesn't have a border between Bulgarian and Romanian spaces. And an identity in which the elements are not playing game of domination, but rather somehow mutually empower through a dialogue one another. In this study which I mentioned to you, which is about to be published by the Bulgarian Diplomatic Institute, I argue that the establishment of a Bulgarian-Romanian or regional dynamic identity and the activity of people and organizations who are trusted by the various parties in some contradictions, such as these people, I call them bridge of friendship, is the way forward in our region, in Southeastern Europe. And with the establishment of cross-border talks, which took place in 2021, even more courageous dynamic identity is information, as it is a Poland-based media, where me, a Polish and Czech journalist, write in English, Polish, Czech, Romanian, and Bulgarian about international relations and social issues. So we have an interest towards cross-border EU realities. For example, we wrote about cases where there are twin cities divided by EU border, and there is even an organization which unites such cities. And we also invite leading experts from the region beyond to comment on international politics with a humane and progressive perspective. And we deal also with some contentious issues such as green transition, migration, feminism, workers' rights. Right now, my colleagues are completing their project for study of the Tour of Mine, which is on the border between Poland and Czech Republic. And I think it's very interesting. It's a journalism fund supported project, and more such investigations or works are to come. So finally, I understand my presentation was a little bit in multi-directions, but I asked myself, what would agency Southeastern Europe look like? Having in mind that I started with the claim that of some people that Bulgaria and Romania don't have a foreign policy. I'm a little bit tempted to ask myself, wouldn't, if that is true, of course, wouldn't some kind of agency of these countries be somehow human or people related, not so much institutional or hegemonic, let's say, not so much even technocratic or sovereignist. These are the poles. But maybe if somebody is able to resist this contradiction and somehow overcome it, maybe then some real life start happens. And I'm interested in studying this agency. I did a podcast with one of the leading Romanian experts from the NGO sector called Vladimir about agency Southeastern Europe. And I'm interested whether a truly transformative and engaged EU with the region should not be interested just in taking should not be interesting not in taking power and dominating stagnancy and failure, but to create conditions where local and regional agency could appear and get strengthened. I know it's a little bit complex phrasing, but I'm somehow interested, let's say, in life, not only in power. And I aid with a quote from a famous movie. It's the start of this movie. I should have been able to say it in Scottish or Irish accent because it's the famous movie Trainspotting. But I can say it only in Eastern European accent.
Do it in the Scottish. Go on.
So I end with the message with which the film starts: choose life, choose your future.
I knew there would be one person who would end on a positive note right at the end of the day, so Vladimir did absolutely that. I was thinking as you were talking, and I'll say more to you privately about this, about Ireland and Northern Ireland. We barely know each other, even after 25 years of peace. And we have a centre based in Armagh called the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, and it does a lot of the kind of things that you're talking about. We now have a shared island university network. So for the very first time, we're actually cooperating on specific strands of research. And there's a lot of work there to do, as there is in the Bulgarian-Romanian case. I want to, if I can, bring the proceedings to a close with apologies about questions simply about timing and the fact that we will have to vacate the building, or else. Firstly, I want to thank a series of people, but particularly to start with Maruna, who was the best possible colleague to cooperate with on this venture, and would not have happened without her. So thank you very much for bringing on board all our Romanian friends and colleagues. It's been really fantastic. I want to also thank my colleagues here in the Institute, Anne Hamilton-Black, our technical virtuoso, who has made all of this possible. From the beginning of COVID, we managed to actually do a lot of activities precisely because Anne was so extraordinarily good at arranging, setting up, and then managing complex online events and then hybrid events since then. So thanks very much indeed to Anne and to our colleague Orla Dunn, who is the logistics manager of the Institute here. Thanks also to Shamsuddin Chayati, my PhD student and all-around assistant extraordinaire. The last conference that we held was a really, really big one in May, and even before I mentioned his name, the whole audience started clapping. It was a sign that he had won them all. I want to also say that thank you obviously to all our speakers, especially to people who have come from Bulgaria, Romania, and North Macedonia, and Ukraine, and in one case, England as well. It was a very rich conversation, which we are going to continue. And to our keynote speaker, Antoinetta Dimitrova, who couldn't be here with us, but she set the tone, I think, for the day by framing the issues in such a intelligent way. Thank you all also to our ambassadors. I should say that this is the very last event, or the second last event, in the Jean Monnet Centre of Excellence project. Adrian, you mentioned yours, and I'll be very interested to talk to you more about it. We're coming to the end of our 3-year period here, and it has been extraordinarily worthwhile for us. So we thank the Jean Monnet unit in Brussels for their help and support with doing this. The best part of it, of course, is always bringing together people who share their experiences in exactly the way that both of you have described in our final session. So thanks again to everybody, and we shall conclude by having a well-earned trip and more in the Roost and elsewhere this evening. So I'll say goodbye. But thank you to everybody who's turned up, our students. All the students, very, very much.